Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. I'm biggity back with the Funky Monkey movie and the straight dope facts. Join us as we take a look back on Backlook Cinema, the podcast. I'm your host, Zo. That's Z-O or Z-O if you're into cinema overseas. It's the 86th episode. Thank you for downloading or streaming. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a look back at the movies of yesteryears and talk about the movie that we love to watch in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Yes, I know it wasn't grammatically correct. I get nervous sometimes. It happens. It happens to us all. If you like what you're about to hear, then please take the time to offer a tiny bit of support by giving us a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can also share or show or share our show. That's what I was trying to say. I'm trying to say share our show on social media. Did I mess up reading my own notes? Of course I did. That is what I do. And now, I really want to welcome a very special person. I want to bring you a very special guest. As promised, I think I told you that I was bringing on a special guest this week. Or maybe I forgot to tell you. I don't remember. Anyways, our next guest has been coast to coast, slinging jokes while simultaneously engaged in an endless battle with his pet cat. He tells jokes for intelligent folks, while at the same time, he brings you strange and unusual observations of the world with this podcast, Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. Ladies and gentlemen, and all points in between, may I present to you, Shane Rogers!
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It's awesome to be here. That was a great intro, and you did your homework. That's cool. That you must have Googled one of my old bits, that cat thing. God, that was from like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I happened to catch it on, I think it was YouTube. Because you got to do your research on your guests, right? So
it was so funny. I tried to take down like all the old videos that I had up, and there's a few of them that were actually recorded by people that are not me, so I can't take them down. So that's one of the ones that I mean, I have some affection for like those old times doing comedy. That was real early days. But I would take that down if I could, but it's not under my control.
Right. It's whether they say the internet is forever.
Right.
So, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you being here. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me. I was feeling a little bit under the weather, but I think I was a little worried. I've already had COVID, and I'm vaxxed and boosted, and I'm like, can't have this thing again.
Yeah.
But I'm a little better, so I don't think it is.
And that's the thing about the pandemic is like it comes back around again and again. You can't just get it once. You got to get it a couple of times, a few times. I don't think I've ever been infected, but I don't know.
Yeah, you said the internet is forever. I feel like COVID is forever.
Right. Well, they said it's entering the endemic stage now. Now it's like it's part of the roster. It's part of the flu, the cold, and now we have the COVID, which is actually part of the cold family. So, welcome aboard, I guess.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking about this movie.
All right. So, before we get started on that, I'm going to ask you some totally obvious questions, and I'm going to ask because my audience knows I'm not an interviewer. I don't. This is not my field. I'm not a journalist. I don't ask intelligent questions. I ask the questions that a normal layperson would ask. So, perusing your website, I've learned some things. And the most obvious question I'm going to throw at you is, which circus did you grow up in?
So, yeah, you did do your homework. So I grew up in a circus called the Pickle Family Circus. It's the dumbest name for a circus possible. It was a small circus in San Francisco, based in San Francisco. And then we would travel the country in the summers. And it was a human-only circus, so we didn't have any animals. They called it a cruelty-free circus. But we had all the other stuff that you would think of with a circus. We had clowns and acrobats and jugglers and, all of the big acts, a big band. And we went from town to town. It was a lot of fun as a kid. I was an acrobat in the show. And, over time it became less fun. Like once you hit high school, it's no longer cool to be the circus kid anymore. So,
Right.
So that was the end of my circus career. But from about 9 to 14, I traveled the country in a circus, flipping and jumping and acting like an idiot.
Well, residually, it looks like it left a great effect on you, at least physically. You look like you're in great shape.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I work also my day job. I work in kind of the health industry. I manage a spa and health club at a resort. So I have a gym literally 20 feet from my office that I have free access to. So I have no excuse not to be in good shape if I was a lazy sack. So yeah, it's worked out well.
Right. So I take it the circus isn't still around.
The circus actually is still around, sort of. They do a yearly Christmas show at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. They were a really beloved circus in the Bay Area for a long time, kind of a performing arts troupe. Them and another group called the Mine Troupe. There was this Caravan Stage Company. There are these sort of, and obviously we were actually involved with another circus, Cirque du Soleil, as well. A lot of our people were from Cirque, and we sent a lot of people to them. So there's a big sort of network of these circuses and performing arts companies that are all sort of well known in that community, and they're still really beloved there. They do their Christmas show, and I think they've done a couple of little sort of nostalgia tours in the last few years. Obviously, not the last couple of years, but pre-COVID, they did a few tours, and yeah, so they're still kicking around a little bit. And then a lot of the alums from the circus have gone on to do other things that are Lorenzo Pizzoni, who's the son of the founder. He had a one-man show that he did that was kind of all about growing up in a circus. And that was actually really popular. And so, yeah, their legacy remains, but they're not touring on a regular basis anymore.
Okay. So when you said acrobatics, you're talking about like really fancy acrobatics. Like this isn't like your regular run of the mill is just tumbling.
No, mostly just tumbling. Like
Oh,
we
really?
were, yeah, no. It was like, back handsprings, back flips, pikes, layouts. Like it was the stuff that you would see in the Olympics, but not as good.
Right.
If it had been Olympic caliber, we would have done that. But we were, I think it was just fun to see young 9-year-old kids flipping around and stuff. We would wear our little roustabout uniforms, and then there was juggling. My mom actually did juggle. She was the box office manager, and then she would join in this what they called the big juggle at the end. So she was a juggler too. And then we had trapeze artists. I did a little bit of trapeze, and I did some trampoline as well. But mostly, I was just a floor tumbler. And so yeah, no, it wasn't like super. There was no fire involved.
Right.
It
I'm
was.
only asking that because you traded people with Cirque du Soleil, and people usually associate that with like really exotic looking acrobatics.
Yeah, Cirque actually, I mean, Cirque du Soleil, a lot of it's pretty standard circus stuff, but their visual arts program, their sort of design, is just really inventive and amazing.
Ah,
And yes, the people that we sent to them were definitely the best of the best. Lorenzo did some time in Cirque, and his sister as well. And I didn't. I was by that point, I was done.
right, right. So you being a comedian, you must get a lot of ribbing from your fellow compatriots
Uh, for being a comedian or for being in
for
a circus?
being in the circus, right?
Well, that is not something that I publicize. So that's on my website.
Except on your website.
Yeah. Well, surprisingly, you probably won't be surprised to hear that comedians don't peruse other comedians' websites very often. So
Okay.
I think if you asked, most of the comics that I know, I don't think any of them would know about that. It's
Okay.
not something I bring up, and I don't talk about it in the show. It's honestly something that I've put on my website mostly for bookers because it's just kind of an interesting. It just sets me apart a little bit. But beyond that, yeah, I don't think I even talk about it. I don't think I've ever done any bits about it on stage, and I doubt that many people know.
That is shocking. I figured that would be your go-to start, right?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be your first joke about your cat. Your first joke would be about life growing up.
Yeah, it wasn't. No, I haven't found like a funny angle on it. I mean, it's kind of silly to have grown up in a circus, but other than that, I mean, there just wasn't. It was like child labor was basically what it was. It was like me having a job at 9 years
Right.
old. Like I didn't get summers like other kids did. I had to go and travel, and they'd be like telling me to go across and flip across a mat.
Right.
So I think I haven't found a way to make that like really funny. And in some ways, it certainly wasn't tragic. I certainly enjoyed it, but it was I don't know if if it was the ideal way to raise a kid.
Right. Right.
It's good to be a kid and not have a job.
Right. So how long have you been doing stand up?
stand up for about 10 years now. And obviously there's been a couple of years off, and I'm just now getting back to performing post COVID. I took a long break, and even once it started coming back, it just wasn't the same. It's still honestly not the same. I did a show at the Punchline pretty recently, and that was good. It felt really good. It was fun to be back. I did mostly a lot of old stuff, just because I don't want to just freewheel it at the Punchline, but it's definitely a different vibe now. The seats are still, there's still some social distancing stuff. Seats are further apart, which is weird. That you're used to packing people into a comedy club so that the laughs are sort of they're almost contagious, right? They sort of spread through the crowd. And when you have these one table here and one table here and one table here, and they can't, they're not hearing each other laugh as much, it just has a weird vibe to it. So comedy is coming back, but it's coming back slowly. My favorite club closed down. Two of my favorite clubs actually closed down, which is a bummer. So it's been kind of a bittersweet return to comedy, and I'm taking my time. But before that, it's been about 10 years, so I'd say 8 years of full-on performing. And yeah, it feels like a long time when I say it, but
yeah, that does sound like a long time. So
I'm
obviously,
a baby in comedy, though. That's how they see it.
like you and many other live entertainers, they had to take a couple years off. So how did you survive? Did you like do Zoom shows, or did you like do parking lot shows, or how'd you do it? How'd you get through?
I did one parking lot show. We had one in Santa Cruz here, and it was really weird, man. Everyone's in their cars, so you can't hear them laugh. And what they would do instead of laugh is they would flicker their lights on the car to indicate that they were laughing. And that's cool. It's a good idea, but it is not the same. When you do a joke and there's just crickets and some lights flashing, it is not a good feeling. And it's also not, laughter is really organic. So you can tell if someone is laughing because they mean it. And with their flashing their lights, maybe they're just being polite. You just don't know. So it's just this weird light flashing after every joke. And I could not hang with that. I did one of those shows, and you know what? I appreciate the people that were putting those on, and I'm really, props to everyone who was involved in those things, keeping comedy going, but it just wasn't for me. And the same thing with Zoom shows. I did a couple of online shows, and they were okay. It's just not what I do comedy for. Like, comedy to me is a live experience. It's like the people are sitting in front of you and they're laughing, and you're getting real-time feedback, and you can see their faces. And on these Zoom shows, it felt like I was talking to a computer, and I don't mind doing that, obviously, in these kind of contexts, and certainly in a podcast. I don't mind talking into a microphone with no one else there, or just one other co-host. But it is a different experience for comedy. That just undermines everything I liked about comedy. And so, no, man, it's been a long time. That show at the Punchline was my first time back in like two and a half years.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine. I've seen and heard a couple of those Zoom shows, and those shows are, especially like when you're listening to, like, there were a couple of comedians, they were trying to do a show through their podcast. So they recorded through Zoom and they presented it as a podcast. And that's pretty rough, because like there are people who don't remember to mic their, what do you call it? Mute their microphones, right?
Yeah.
So you can hear them commenting while somebody's trying to tell a joke or while they're trying to do a skit. And then I've seen one that was, Christopher Titus, he was a little bit smarter about it. So he had like a tiny audience of his closest friends, and that's who he and his friends performed in front of. They at least had some type of feedback, but it was all Will Struck. Like, everybody had to be vaxxed, and before you went on stage, like, everybody was masked until they got on stage, and they would take off their masks and they would do their set. But it was, and a lot of those shows, they're just not as funny because they're not in front of a live audience. And so they're not, like, they haven't been sharpened, they haven't been out in front of audiences and sharpening their set. Instead, they've been out, I guess, practicing at home or practicing in front of just a couple of people. So they don't really know how funny they are. Right.
That's a big part of it. You have to go to like little open mics. I mean, I've seen Titus is great, and I've seen Titus at little open mics. He's even he'll do the drop in at like the Comedy Store or whatever. Sarah Silverman will drop in. They do these little shows just to try out material. You have to do that. That's why I said I mostly did old stuff at the Punchline, because I wasn't going to go there and just wing it with a bunch of new material, especially since I haven't been in the clubs a lot. I don't know what people are talking about and what's been done, and I don't want to go up there and be the hacky guy who's doing the stuff that everyone's been talking about COVID or something.
Right.
I was like, I'm just going to stick with stuff that I know works. And yeah, that's the hardest thing. I mean, you have to have those little rooms. You have to have comedy has to have a big network of rooms for you to go try stuff out in because it's a lot of falling on your face. Even if you're good, even I mean, I've seen every big comic that you can think of. I've seen them bomb at least a few bits trying stuff out. And then by the time they get to their special, they've ironed it out and they're not going to do the bad stuff. So, you need that network. And it's finally coming back, but yeah, it's been a rough ride.
Right. Yeah, I've heard about people talk about doing their shows and like how some people are just they'll go in front of the audience, like especially a small club, with their notes, like with cue cards or whatever, and they'll read their notes straight off of their cards, right? Because they're trying out new material or whatever. So like you got to do whatever you got to do to iron out the wrinkles to get it to work.
Oh yeah, even the biggest comics. I mean, I did a show with Sarah Silverman at the Comedy Store, and she went up. She just put a piece of paper on the little stool and just like read some bits off it. And she, there were a couple where she stumbled through. She was like, never mind, I don't remember that one. Like, trying to remember it and word for word. And some of the jokes were really funny, and some of them hit, and some of them she just ate it. And she's a pro. She was just like, all right, next joke.
Right.
Off that one off. Go to the next bit.
All right. So I don't have a good segue for this. I'm going to shift to a completely different subject. So, I was listening to your podcast and I was trying to figure out, cause I didn't know. So was it you that had the English major?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. So what would you end up doing with your English major?
Well, that's probably why I'm a comedian and I'm not, I'm not working in Wall Street. I'm not making the big bucks. That's because I was an English major.
Right. So you weren't teaching or writing or anything like that?
No, I did plan to go to grad school. The ultimate idea was, or the long-term plan was to teach. And I taught like third grade for a year after college. I substitute taught. And then I moved to Santa Cruz, and my plan was to do grad school. And in the meantime, I kind of got some like a side job working at a resort. And they ended up just promoting me a lot. And I was like, all right, well, I'm making good money doing this, and I can find other outlets for writing. And honestly, like comedy and even the podcasting to some extent, there's a lot of writing involved. And that's, in college, I had a comedic newspaper column. I went to UC Davis, and the Aggie, I would do a weekly column, and it was humorous. And so I had a lot of like writing. I just had a lot of funny writing that I had done that was just kind of sitting there after I graduated, and I didn't know what to do with it. And that's kind of where the comedy came from. I started a website, or like a blog, where I would put up a lot of this stuff up. And then a woman who was actually working at a comedy club messaged me and was like, hey, your site is really funny. All your stuff is really funny. Have you thought of doing stand-up? And she had me do my first set actually in Chicago. I flew out and did a set at the Laugh Factory there, just because she was like, hey, I think you're really funny. If you're ever in Chicago, come do it. And so that's how it started. And so, writing, as much as writing is performing, as much as comedy is performing, it really is writing. Like that's where the humor comes from. All the stuff that you see on stage has been probably jotted down in a notebook before they ever said it. Like you said, they come up there with their little notepad. So yeah, I still use the writing. I'm just getting paid for it, but in a sideways, in a sideways fashion.
Well, it seems like in your case, it worked. Going to college and getting a degree, it just didn't work the way you expected it to, but it worked fantastically.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a good way to look at it.
So, and I brought that up because, like I said, I listened to a couple of episodes of your show, just to try to learn more about you. I find that I do like it. It's called Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. So, what gave you the idea for this podcast?
So this really came about it started pre-COVID. The idea was that me and this other guy that I know, his name is Duncan, we were in bands together for a long time. He was a singer. He's really funny. And like, he is someone who, he's the one who should be doing comedy. Like I'm not, if you can see even from my regular demeanor, like I'm just not a funny person in general. I have to write the funny to make it funny. He's just a funny guy. Like that's just his persona. He can do like accents and all kinds of stuff. He's just very vocal and very performative. And I've always tried to get him to do comedy, except that he's a little too thin-skinned for it. For comedy, you have to have calluses, because you go up there and you're going to have days where you bomb or someone heckles you. And like if someone heckled him, he would just leap off the stage and, tackle them. He just can't handle that. So he hasn't done official comedy, but he's just a funny guy. And so I knew that we've had chemistry. We've been in bands together. We've done stuff throughout our lives. We went to college together, and so I just knew that it would be a good dynamic. And so when I was coming up with a podcast, every comedian in this day and age has to have a podcast. And his idea actually was like, hey, why don't we make it something that fits our dynamic? I've always been the more academic one. I had a scholarship. I was just very serious about school. And he's always been a little bit less serious about it. And so I would lecture him a lot about things like, it's always been our dynamic where Duncan will say something stupid and I explain why it's stupid. And we kind of bring that to the podcast where, we decided that we would come up with a topic every week to kind of keep it fun. It would be a different topic every week, and that I would research the topic and learn about it and then teach Duncan about it, which has kind of always been our dynamic anyway. And we didn't know how that was going to go. I mean, when we started out, we would record in our car, just using like these two microphones and a little, Zoom F4 or whatever. And we just weren't taking it seriously at all. And then it started to pick up steam. Like we started realizing we were getting a lot of downloads, and we kind of felt bad about it because it's like we're starting to actually get traction and we're not taking this seriously at all. And so we were like, we got to invest a little bit in this. We got to take it more seriously. And then COVID hit, and it became the only outlet that we had. Like I couldn't do comedy anymore. And so it was the perfect time. We had just invested in some new equipment. We had a little bit of a studio going, and we were like, let's try to make this real. And during COVID, it just took off. And it's been amazing to watch it grow. We have now a Discord community with like around 400 people in there, and they're always chatting about the show. And they go in, there's a poll that we create every week based on their suggestions for a topic, and then they vote on the topic, so they choose the topic. And it's just been really cool to have this back and forth with the community there. And and now we've got we're doing really well podcast wise, numbers wise. It's just been really cool to see it take off.
That's pretty awesome. So there was something that you said about Duncan, about his demeanor as like why he couldn't be a comedian. Like he would immediately go off on somebody who attacked him or whatever as a heckler. So I'm thinking, it immediately got me thinking about Charlie Murphy, because Charlie Murphy told this story about how he was a member of his brother Eddie Murphy's security. And so if he saw somebody not laughing at Eddie Murphy's joke, that would set him off. It's like he wants to punch that person. So I guess Duncan is not too far off from that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I love Charlie Murphy too. It was sad to see him go because, man, those sketches that he did were hilarious. But,
absolutely.
But yeah, the Charlie Murphy Hollywood stories, those are just so classic.
What's even more fun is that some of those stories got confirmed by the people that they were talking about. So that's even more gratifying.
Yeah, I want to know if the Prince one is true. The Prince pancake one is my favorite.
I think somebody had confirmed. I don't know if it was Prince himself, but I think it was Eddie Murphy himself that corroborated that story. I think he was on Jimmy Fallon, and he said, yeah, I mean, like some of the details were a little bit different, but he said, yeah, basically that's what happened. It's that they were playing basketball with Prince, and he served them pancakes. The other thing is that Prince was actually a basketball player in high school or something, but he's really short. So he's not going to be like the first stringer or anything like that. But apparently he's very good. He's just short, right?
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. That was such a great. I'm glad that there is truth to it because that was hilarious. But I totally feel for Charlie Murphy. I mean, that is, it is frustrating. Comedians will talk about this a lot, and it's 100% true that like if you're on stage and even if you're killing, even if you're having an amazing set, if there's like one guy that's sitting there with his arms crossed and he's just like looking at you like you're not funny, that's all you can focus on is that guy, and you either want to tear him up, like you either want to go after him or you want to make him laugh. Like one of those things has to happen, or you're going to or you'll get off stage and everyone's like, oh, great set, man, you killed it. And you're like, nah, fuck it.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. So, in listening to your podcast, you were talking, I think it was your latest episode. So you were talking about grammar and misused words and stuff like that. And that's funny because I dig grammar. I don't know if I'm a grammar czar, but I do try to stop myself from correcting people all the time. So there was one thing that you said that there was a phrase because you started talking about phrases. So one is, you've got another thing coming. And the original is you've got another think coming because it originates in Britain where think is a noun, I guess. So, and I was thinking, but I kind of like you got another thing coming because it depends on the context. Cause it's like say, your mom comes up to you and is like, you're going to finish eating that cereal or you got another thing coming. So you know what's coming. You know what's coming.
It might be a shoe.
Right.
Your hand upside your head. You don't know.
Right.
Yeah, that was a funny one. Because we definitely disagreed on that one. It's just something that's always bothered me because I remember that was something that I had read early on, like you've got another thing coming. So I knew what it was. And then I would always hear people say thing. And it's one of those things where like it just sticks in the back of your head. And every time you hear it, it bothers you. And I would have to stop myself from correcting people because you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be the guy who's
right.
saying, no, you know what? You want to be the actually guy, right? Like actually, it's think because.
Now that you know, now you can't not know it. You can't not hear it. It's funny because I've been accused of being that guy.
the one that I do always, and my wife gets on me for it because it bothers her, but I'll never not do it. Mostly only because it bothers her at this point. Is literally like we talked about literally and how it's just always misused, or at least so often it's misused. And that is the one that bothers me. And for some reason, we'll watch TV and they say it always. We watch a lot of reality TV because she's super into reality TV. So they're always misusing literally. They'll always say like, I could literally eat a horse, I think was the example I used. And every time someone says that, now I don't even say anything. I just look at my wife. Like, I know. Shut up. And yeah, because I would correct it so often that now it's just a thing.
Right. Now it's the dictionary has bent to the will of the people. Yeah, so, right. Being that you have an interest in words, I take it that you have an interest in etymology.
That I have an interesting etymology?
Yeah.
Like my name or?
Yeah. Have you looked at your name? Have you figured out what your name meant? It was funny because I've had the hardest time finding out what my name meant, and I had to do some heavy research. And I've gotten to the closest that I'm ever going to get to figuring out what my name means.
Oh, what is it?
So my full name is Alonzo. So right. Alonzo means it could mean battle ready, or it could mean always ready. It comes from a German, an old German name. I'm trying to think of what it is. But it doesn't sound anything like Alonzo.
Of course.
It's actually Alfredo is closer to the German name because it has an F sound in it. It's something I forgot what it was, but it's a very own Germanic name. So it's either and scholars can't agree on what it is. So it's either battle ready or always faithful or something like that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I've never even, for some reason, I've not ever really been that interested in where my name comes from. And it is weird because you would think I would be, but etymology of words is not something I'm super into. Like I think I've only looked up words mostly because of the podcast and people kind of pushing us in that direction. But I'm always interested in the current usage of words and correct usage of words, but I've never been super involved in like the where they come from. But I should be. If I were a good English major, I'd be much more interested in that.
Well, you're in luck because I looked it up. I looked up your name. So Shane, that's actually Irish for John. And John means God is gracious, which is why everybody names their child John.
So they came up, maybe because John is the most generic name possible.
Super generic.
Another version of it. I'm glad that I have a shorthand for the most generic possible name.
Right. And it's there's actually a bunch of steps between John and God is gracious. It comes from a longer name and it has its origin in Hebrew. And I didn't go through all of the steps. So I just put down the basic thing that it meant. And also Rogers comes from a Germanic name. The first part is Rod. It's Hrod, but I guess it's pronounced Rod. And that means fame. And the last part, ger or jur, that means spear. So Rogers means famous spear.
Oh, Famous Spear John is my name. All right, I'll take it.
John's Famous Spear.
Famous Spear. Sounds like my porn name, but I'll take it.
Yes, it does sound like a poor name. That's it for the interview portion of the show. I think that we're going to shift over to talk about the movie that we had just watched right after this short audio message. The Made for TV Movie Podcast, just # MFVMC podcast, and you can find them on Google. Just give it a Goog, as they say.
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth.
And I'm Kirsten, and we are the hosts of the Made for TV Movie Club podcast. Beth, we've been friends for a long time.
We sure have, Kay, since before Rachel kissed Ross for the first time.
It's true, and since we share a love of all things TV, we decided to team up to review our favorite TV movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
You don't need to watch the movie. We did that for you.
You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Deezer, and iHeartRadio.
And find us on our socials.
Join us in our Facebook group, Made for TV Movie Club Podcast. Follow us on Insta at made_for_TV_movie_club. Tweet us at TV Movie Club Pod 1.
Or give us a Goog at #MFTVMC podcast, and you'll find us.
We'll see you soon in the clubhouse.
And we're back. So anyway, the movie that we had watched was The Running Man. Why don't you tell us more about this fantastic movie?
So, in a dystopian America, a falsely convicted policeman gets his shot at freedom when he must forcibly participate in a TV game show where convicts, called runners, must battle killers for their freedom.
Yes, and that's from IMDb. This movie was released on November 13th, 1987, produced by Taft Entertainment Pictures, Keith Barish Productions, Home Box Office, which is awesome. I don't know why it isn't on Home Box Office all of the time. It grossed over $38 million in the US and Canada on a $27 million budget, and it had middling reviews. I am shocked. I thought this was a mega hit.
Really?
I thought this was like the biggest movie of all time, but it kind of came out in the same year as Predator, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So it's kind of competing with that one, but still, I thought it would have made a lot more money. But
after rewatching it, I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it." It's
right.
It's so funny because I liked it. I loved it as like a teenager and a kid, and now like watching it back, I'm like, "Oh man, this is pretty bad." Like it's still, I have nostalgia for it and I enjoy it, but it's not a good movie.
Right. I mean, I'll admit it. It's not going to be like amongst the greatest, but it's still it's just funny. It's just a fun movie to watch, and I compare it to like professional wrestling, right? So.
It is, yeah.
When I think so, that's the only reason I think that I can still enjoy this movie, because I don't have to take it seriously. So
that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So this movie was starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Ben Richards. He was we know most of the movies that Arnold Schwarzenegger has done, so I don't want to go keep bashing him on his past projects. So instead, I'm going to look at the stuff that he's going to do. So what's in post-production now is a movie called Kung Fury 2, which he's supposed to be in. And then there's a TV show called UTAP that he's supposed to be in. And the movie that's been announced is The Legend... Excuse me. I don't know what that was. The Legend of Conan. So I hope that it goes past the announcement stage and goes into the pre-production stage.
Is he playing like Conan's grandfather, or what's his...
He could play old Conan. It's not like he's aged out. He could still play old Conan. And in every likelihood, what'll probably happen is that he'll be passing the mantle over to like a younger version. So maybe his son, and his son would probably be in his 40s, or maybe his grandson. Like the Conan family has ruled over this region for 80 years or something like that. And that's how the movie will start. So I don't know. But I would love to see another Conan movie. Movies that are also not good, but still fun to watch.
No, I agree. Absolutely. That'll be interesting. And it also stars Maria Conchita Alonso as Amber Mendez. And apparently she was in Predator 2, which I don't remember. I know that I've seen it, but I don't remember her being in it. She was in something called Extreme Prejudice and then a movie called Spread. And that's also, speaking of porn names, that's kind of curious. I want to look into that one.
Yeah, apparently she's been in a lot of projects. Predator 2, I remember her specifically because she was the one that the Predator did not want to kill. Because the Predator looked at her in his infrared vision and saw that she was pregnant. So he chose not to kill her. So he knew, the Predator knew that she was pregnant before she knew she was pregnant. So it's like, the Predator had decided, I'm not about that. I'm not about that life. This is
Yeah, Predator's a real respectable murderer.
Right, right.
Was that was the one with Danny Glover? Is that the Predator 2?
That's correct. Danny Glover and the guy with the teeth. What's his name? Nope, don't remember. It'll come back to me later.
I haven't seen it in
Right. But he's a guy with big teeth. Anyways, moving right along. Richard Dawson. I was really shocked. I was just glancing at his bio, and then I learned a whole bunch of stuff about him that I did not know before. So what I learned was that he was born Colin Lionel M. That's his real name, or his original name. So he went from Colin Lionel M. to Richard Dawson. And he was born in Hampshire, England.
That tracks. And it's a good switch, I think.
I guess. And he played Damon Killian. And most people best know him from his hosting of Family Feud. He's also been on Hogan's Heroes and The Devil's Brigade. The most impactful thing about this movie is me seeing Richard Dawson on here, because even though I watched Hogan's Heroes, I don't recognize him on Hogan's Heroes. So he looks exactly as he looked on Family Feud. So when I seen him in this movie, I was like, oh my God, it's the Family Feud guy.
And I got to give it up to him. He crushes it in this role.
He does.
He's like all in. I have to say, I think he was one of my favorite characters in this movie. And I didn't remember him being as good as he was, but he's not playing it campy. Although, the whole movie comes across as campy regardless, but like he's really going in on it.
Yes.
And he has big Bob Barker energy on this.
Well, not only has he been a TV host for years, but also he's a for real actor. Like he was acting before he became a game show host. So yeah, he really did the thing.
Yeah, props to him on this one. Yaphet Kotto was William Laughlin, apparently. Who even is this?
Well, he was the black man that was killed later on. He was one of the runners with Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the resistance fighters. And
he got good too. So he's the guy that Arnold that they fake the fight in the beginning.
Right.
Punched him and okay, he was good in this. And I do remember him from Alien. I didn't know the name, but yeah, that was the guy from Alien, Midnight Run. I don't know what Live and Let Die is, but I remember him from both Alien and Midnight Run.
Live and Let Die is one of the Roger Moore James Bond movies.
Oh, James Bond, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Yaphet Kotto, he's been in a lot of movies. I had learned something about him a while ago, was that he was the original actor that they was going to have be captain of the Enterprise in Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he was supposed to be captain, but he turned the role down, and I'm mad at him for doing it.
Yeah, that's a shame too, because he would have been good. He has real gravitas.
Absolutely.
Like
yeah. He's it's just something about him. He has a presence that's kind of hard to ignore.
Yeah.
So up next is Jim Brown. He played Fireball. He's been in Mars Attack, The Dirty Dozen, and Any Given Sunday.
Yeah, Jim Brown, and he was a football player, right? Like
yeah,
a football player.
Yeah. And
then we have Jesse the Body Ventura, and I don't know if he needs an introduction. We all know Jesse. He plays Captain Freedom. He was in Predator, famously, I guess the same year, so he was hanging out with Arnold a lot. Batman and Robin, and Demolition Man. Those are all campy, good movies. Those are all fun, ridiculous movies.
Right.
Batman is god-awful, but it's still entertaining to me. And Jesse, oh my God, he is killing it in this movie too. Him as the like jazzercise guy. He does like the Richard Simmons thing where he's like doing a fitness class with a bunch of ladies and he's wearing the spandex and everything. Oh, good for him.
Right. He was, besides Predator, I think even he has more screen time in this one than even in Predator. Like he
Oh, yeah.
really, he's really putting himself out there in this movie.
Absolutely.
So up next is Erlen van Lith. Erlen van Lith. He played Dynamo, and he's been in Stir Crazy, The Wanderers, and Alone in the Dark.
Oh, Dynamo. That was just chef's kiss. That character. Like a fat guy in a clear plastic like Trojan helmet, like one of those with the light bright like outfit on him, and then he sings opera and kills people. Oh, best character ever. It's amazing. Marvin J. McIntyre played Weiss. He was in Back to the Future Part 3, Short Circuit, and Pale Rider. Short Circuit and Back to the Future 3, I do remember. I don't know about Pale Rider.
Yeah, I don't know much about him. Up next is Gus Rethweiss. He played Buzzsaw. He was in The Scorpion King, Twins, and The Concorde, Airport 79. I think there's been a bunch of those airport movies, so this is Airport 79.
Gotcha. And then this one is great. So it says Professor Toru Tanaka. He's professor. He played Sub-Zero. He was in Last Action Hero, also, I guess, with Arnold, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and Darkman. And,
yeah, he's always playing the big Asian guy. Whenever they need a big Asian guy, they call him.
Shockingly.
Not actually a professor. He didn't get his title from going to school. Let's put it that way. I got more of that in the trivia.
Oh, excellent. I want to hear about that.
Up next is Mick Fleetwood. He played Mick, and he's been in Zero Tolerance, Snide and Prejudice, and Burning Down the House.
Yeah, they really reached for that character name there. I was shocked when I saw him come up on the credits. I didn't remember that Mick Fleetwood and this next guy, Dweezil Zappa, so two famous musicians, were in this movie. And Dweezil Zappa played Stevie. He's also been, I guess, in Duckman, Private Dick / Family Man. I don't know what that is. Anarchy TV, and Jack Frost, which I'm assuming is that horror movie with the snowman. Is that right?
I don't know. I didn't see Jack Frost. But what's interesting is that when you read Duckman, that's the whole title. The whole title of the show is Duckman, Private Dick / Family Man.
Oh, got it. Duckman, Private Dick / Family Man. That is a mouthful. Good
yes, it is. I used to watch. I've seen a couple episodes of that. He plays one of the side characters. And Mick Fleetwood, there's a little bit of trivia about him being in this movie. And last on this list, because every time I see him, no matter how small of a part he plays, and he's in the movie, I got to put him on the list, is Sven Ole Thorson. He plays Sven. He's been in Hard Target, The Sum of Our Fears, and Gladiator. He's one of Arnold's friends, so a lot of times he'll get cast in a movie with Arnold. So he played the giant security guard.
Another example of real creativity with the character name.
Right?
Yeah, you're Sven. This movie apparently was directed by Paul Michael Glazer. And I knew that, but I didn't know that he had directed Kazam, and also The Cutting Edge and The Air Up There.
Yes, and Kazam was the very last movie that he directed, because after that there was because none of them ever did any good. none of these are very good movies. The Air Up There is probably as good as The Running Man, and I don't know anything about The Cutting Edge. But yeah, Kazam was Kazam was the one that lost money. Like all of these, I think all of these probably lost money, but Kazam didn't even make its budget. Like it didn't match its budget. It made less money than the reported budget, and it was like, well, that's enough for you. So he got banished back to the world of television. So he directs a lot of TV now, but yeah, he's not doing movies anymore.
Fittingly, I think that's fair.
Right. Now, this movie was written by Richard Bachman. We all know him as Stephen King, and Stephen E. DeSouza, who's, I would argue, is the real author of this movie, because this movie is barely based on the book called The Running Man.
We'll have to talk about that. I read The Running Man. I actually reread it for this podcast.
Oh, really? Awesome.
It is they're not even.
I got to get my hands on that then. So Stephen King, there's some movies that are based on his work are Carrie, The Shining, Stand By Me, The Shawshank Redemption, and as Richard Bachman, Thinner, just Thinner. That's the only other word. I think he wrote like 4 or 5 books as Richard Bachman. I actually read one of them. I think it's called Desolation, but Thinner is the only one that they made into a movie.
There were a couple really good ones. Rage is really good, and The Long Walk is one of my favorite Stephen King books, and he wrote it as Richard Bachman. But for some reason, they only turned these 2 ridiculous, nonsensical books into movies.
Right. Actually, Desolation, I think it's called Desolation, or Desolation, or something like that. He kind of wrote that as a gag because he wrote that after everybody knew that he was Richard Bachman.
Okay.
So the gag is that Stephen King wanted to write more books because he writes faster than, I guess, a lot of other authors. But there was like an unwritten rule that a genre author couldn't publish more than 1 book a year. So he created the Richard Bachman persona so that he could publish more books.
Interviews with him too. So one of the other reasons, one of the main reasons he actually did it also was because he wanted to see if he could recreate his fame. He had this fear, I think, that a lot of like successful authors and performers and people have, that he had just gotten lucky because Carrie was his big break, right? And once they made the movie Carrie, it like launched him. And he was wondering if he hadn't made Carrie, like, would he have made it?
Right.
So Richard Bachman was his attempt to see if he could like recapture the magic, you know, if he would be able to do it. If no one knew my name, would they still read my stuff?
Right.
It was interesting. I mean, it was starting to pick up steam a little bit. He was doing pretty well. Richard Bachman was selling okay, and then a librarian actually figured it out and busted him, and so he didn't get to complete the experiment. But yeah, that was part of Richard Bachman, was partly because he had all this extra stuff, and then also because he just wanted to see if he could do it again.
Well, it kind of worked. I'll read it in the trivia, but it kind of worked. And also, de Souza, he wrote Judge Dredd, The Flintstones, Beverly Hills Cop 3, and Ricochet. I don't like all of these movies on this list, but he is like a prolific screenwriter and story writer for movies. So I do like a lot of his stuff. Like I will defend Judge Dredd, with my battle axe. That was just a fun movie.
Is campy and silly and fun. I even liked kind of the new one, actually, the remake.
Oh yeah, technically the remake is better, but
the reboot was fun. It's not as fun as the old one. The old one,
it's definitely not fun, and it's not meant to be. It's like what if we took the Judge Dredd comic seriously? Like, what if we, what if it was canon? And that's what they did.
Exactly.
So what's up with the music in this?
So the music was by Harold Faltermeyer and Vassal Binford. Cool name. 47 credits, I guess, to one of these people's names.
Oh, Faltermeyer. You know what? I forgot to get Vassal Binford's information. So all of this is based on Harold Faltermeyer.
All right, and he's got a good resume here. He's got Beverly Hills Cop and Top Gun. So I wonder, did he do like dun 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 dun?
No, that was Herbie Hancock.
I was gonna say, all right, that's because Top Gun has some classics, but they're mostly, I think they're mostly 80s rock songs, basically.
Right. Well, there's the needle drops, the rock songs like they use in a montage, and then there's like the actual score that's behind like the fight scenes or whatever. So that's what he wrote. He wrote the scores, and he also wrote for Tango and Cash. Although I don't remember what that music sounded like. So, but it was fun. The music in this movie, it was fun. It wasn't like generic, right? It was its own thing. So that's what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, it was definitely it's definitely like synthesizer cheesy 80s stuff, but I feel like it worked because the entire movie was cheesy 80s stuff. So
right, absolutely.
It's appropriate.
So that's it for the opening credits, and if you're enjoying this show, remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our refurbished website at backlickcinemas.com/shop. Autumn is coming. It's coming up, so if you're in need of some new gear, you got school, you got the fall coming out, you want some new stuff, then go check it out. And now, up next is our favorite parts. All right, Shane, what were your favorite parts of the movie? Yeah, that was the sound I was supposed to play.
Right. Very appropriate. So yeah, some of my favorite parts, like I have one, I'll give you my first, is just like a compound favorite part, and it's every time someone gets their nuts crushed in this movie, because I don't know what it is. I don't know if the director had some kind of like fetish for, CBT, like C and B torture, because Arnold grabs people in the nuts a bunch of times. The Maria Conchita Alonso, she throws like a piece of dynamite at someone's nuts. Like she hits Dynamo in the balls. Like everyone's getting cracked in the nuts, and I don't understand why, but it's just hilarious every time. And they seem like they're having way too much fun with it. Like Arnold goes full in on like grabbing a guy and lifting him by his balls within the first 5 minutes of this movie. That like breakout, the prison breakout scene.
Right.
And I don't know what it was, but there is a fascination with hurting nuts.
I didn't notice that, but yeah, you see that. You're going to get that a lot in movies.
I guess. Not to this level, man. They really love it. And, I'm here for it.
What I really liked is that it all happens so quickly. Like it opens up and it's like, you got helicopter gunships and fire and they're shooting on people. It's like, and then they're turning on their captain. It's like, oh, well, this movie is starting off quickly, right? It's starting off with a bang. I really enjoy when movies do that.
Yeah, they just jump right in. There is no backstory for Arnold or anything. It's just like, this guy is he's a hero, and that's all you need to know.
He's just a police officer. It's like, I don't know what terrible things that he's been doing as a police officer, but I guess he's finally had enough. He's like, I will not shoot on innocent people, right? That just want food, for God's sakes.
Yeah, they really, and it is interesting. I mean, we can talk about like the differences, but it's so different from the book. Like the book, it just has nothing to do with this. The guy in the book is actually just this, it's so sad. The book is tragic. It's like this guy who's just poor and his wife is a prostitute because that's the only way they can feed their daughter. And it's just like, it could not be further from a heroic, helicopter pilot. Like, oh, wow.
Yeah, you're not going to find too many superheroic characters in a Stephen King book.
Yeah.
So, that's funny. I'm actually reading a Stephen King book now. It's coincidentally, it's called They Live. I think it's called They Live or They Bleed, something like that. I can't remember. But I'm just at the beginning, and it's about this little kid. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I don't know if you read something like that. I think it's called
most Stephen King books, but I don't know that one.
It's a newer book. I think it's called. No, let me look it up real quick. I think it's called They Bleed. Actually, I'm not reading. I'm listening to it on Audible. I'm a cheater.
Nice. Is it good? I'll have to check it out if it's good. I'm a Stephen King fan. So.
If It Bleeds, and I should have remembered that because we've been talking about The Predator and Jesse Ventura, and he has a. If it bleeds, we can kill it. No, that was Arnold Schwarzenegger. If it bleeds, we can kill it. So I should have known.
They reprised that line in the new Prey.
It's in Prey. Oh, that's all. I gotta watch that.
They have a callback to it.
Right. So it's called If It Bleeds. It has a cat on the cover, so it has something to do with cat. I haven't gotten to the cat part yet.
Well, I like cats and I like Stephen King, so I'm gonna check that one.
So also I noticed that Kato is taller than Arnold. There are a lot of people that are taller than Arnold in this movie. It's like you kind of imagine that he's this big, gigantic guy, but he's really not that tall. There are a lot of people that Sven is taller than him. Jesse Ventura is taller. Everybody's taller than Arnold. So.
I think in general in life there are a lot of people that are taller than Arnold.
Right. So I also like that. As far as the story goes, like he gets rescued, but he's not eager to join the resistance. He's like, he gets freed and he's like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm going to go look for my brother. I'm going to go on a run by myself. Good luck with your revolution.
Yeah. There were a lot of good moments in this movie. I liked, there were even a couple good comedy lines that worked for me. Like overall, it's pretty bad from a comedy standpoint. Like all of the one-liners are pretty painful. Like even for Arnold, they're super cringe. But he's got a couple little lines in there that really work. There was a throwaway line where she says like, I'm going to throw up because he's kidnapping her and he has a Hawaiian shirt on. He's like, go ahead. It won't show up on this shirt.
Right.
was like, all right, I chuckled. That's not too bad.
Yeah. I think it's like they wrote this movie specifically. I guess what happened is like once they figured out that they were going to get Schwarzenegger, because he wasn't the only one they were calling for this role. So once they figured out they had him, they was like, well, we got to write some one-liners, right?
And they just went overboard, like so bad. I mean, there's some of them don't even make sense. What was the one where he's like, "This is Sub-Zero, now just zero."
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I didn't make any sense whatsoever. I was like, why is that not? Why did they do that? That is not funny at all. I don't get it.
It's nonsensical. It's not even like sub versus plane zero.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Now
how is that worse than what it was? I don't even get it.
I mean, I think I get it now. He could have just said, now he's just zero, instead of saying now he's just plain zero. It could have been he couldn't get the inflection just right.
Yeah, plain was. It felt like they had put in. It felt like they left a space for a one-liner in the script, and they're like, "We'll get to these eventually. We'll put something in there." And like at the last minute, they realized they didn't have one for that, and they're like, "I don't know, just toss something."
Right.
That was definitely a throwaway line.
Right.
Yeah, those were funny. I also liked all the like sweet old grannies in the audience who were just like bloodthirsty and like, oh, Dynamo's my favorite, or like, Buzzsaw. I like watching people get hacked up. That was pretty classic too.
That's the professional wrestler reference. Idiom. What the comparisons that I liked with because like people have their favorite wrestlers, so these guys have their favorite stalkers. They have their favorite killers, and they come out there and they got this huge gimmick. Like what immediately I think about is somebody like the Undertaker, who is like. You're very gimmicky when you think about somebody like the Undertaker. It's a whole bunch of gimmicks with that particular persona. So with these characters, these stalkers, it's kind of like the same thing, except they get to keep all of their stuff, right, to beat you up with.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I've been listening. Our next episode. Spoiler alert. Hopefully Duncan doesn't hear this. I don't think he will I don't think it's going to come out before our next. But our next episode is going to be about gladiators. And I've been kind of immersing myself in all this gladiator stuff. And this is not far off from like what it was like. I mean, they had, they would throw people into the arena with lions and tigers and just watch them get torn apart. They would reenact these battles or these mythological stories where people would get burnt to death in the arena. And, you had like just regular ass people, just, 10-year-olds in the audience eating chicken legs and, cheering, watching people get burned to death. Like this is not that far from things that have happened in real history. So, that was kind of funny to see, is that like it's played for comedy, but like there's a precedent for this. And this is also a serious part of human nature too.
Right. I've heard they used to flood the Coliseum, and they would put people on like boats to reenact naval battles. Like they went all out.
Yeah, I'm reading about that. It's interesting. There's a lot of controversy as to whether or not that was actually feasible. But yeah, there's that it got very intricate. It was very elaborate. These
right. So I what I liked is that they predicted some things of the future pretty good. So one of the things was like the voice control, like when what's her name, when she goes into her apartment and she's turning on the lights and the TV and the phone with the voice control. It's like I'm almost there. There are only a few things that are not hooked up, but I'm almost at the point where I'm just
is that they're like using it's full on Alexa, right? Like everything's voice activated, but then they have this like cathode ray TV that's like 5 inches. It's 5 inches wide, the screen, and it's even longer and deeper. Like it's volume. It's like one of the oldest, crappiest TVs you could possibly have, but they're like using voice control for it.
Right.
But yeah, that was legit.
Well, I think they were closer to even when this movie was made, they were probably closer to voice control than they were to flat screen TVs. So
exactly. They also nailed at the very end. They have spoiler alert. They have the I guess the face over the where they put someone's face on someone else. God, what is that?
I think they call it face mapping or texture mapping.
Sure, like face mapping or texture mapping, which now though you can do deep fakes. That's
deep fakes. That's correct. That's what we're doing now.
Yeah, they basically deep fake him so that they can frame him for having well, not frame.
Well, they're not frame. They're faking his death.
But yeah, I mean that's a thing that now the face mapping stuff is real. But that was a legit one where I was like, oh, that's something that they actually called.
Yeah, they call that like right on the money. Probably not. It probably doesn't look like that the way they did it, but still, that the fact that they were able to do it, it was that was good prediction right there.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had mentioned how they tried to escape in a Hawaiian t-shirt. The kidnapping made no sense though. Like, why would you do that? It's like you have her tied up in her own apartment. You took her only means of transportation, and you took a lot of her money. You could have just left and went to Hawaii. You didn't need her. What was the point?
Yeah, there was a lot that just was silly. Like, just I love that. I love that you were talking about the tech too. I love that they had like this huge high budget studio and everything, and then their method for getting people into the start of the Running Man is to just like drop them down like a hamster chute into like a soccer goal. Like, it's just the lowest tech possible entrance. But yeah, some of those just didn't make any sense at all. He's literally walking through, like, what is he gonna hold a gun to her while he's going through like the metal detectors or something? Like, it just makes no sense.
Right. No, that part didn't make any sense because it's like you don't want to take that hostage. She's tied up and she's going to get you caught, and voila, she got him caught. Right.
Yeah.
And then she had a change of heart. Like, okay, movie, it's fine. I already like you. You don't have to ruin it. I already like you.
Yeah. There's a lot of eye rolling moments in this movie.
Right. Also, this will be in the trivia also, but did you notice the court appointed talent agent, or what do you call? Yeah, he was a court appointed talent agent, and how he got stabbed in the back. But did you notice what he was saying as he was reading the contract to Ben?
This is the guy who gets stabbed in the back with the pen.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
It was a bunch of gibberish because I was listening closely, and it, like I said, I mentioned it in the trivia, but I was listening closely, and I was like, nothing he is saying is makes any sense. It's like he's reading, like when you have a Word document and it has like a what you call it, it has like a fake Latin on there that you're supposed to type over to type your document. That's what it sounded like. He was saying faux Latin because he was saying like actual words, but none of these words like go together. Like it didn't make sense. Like, I understand, like, you're supposed to, like, legal jargon doesn't make a lot of sense to regular people, but this is past legal jargon. This doesn't even make common sense, right?
It's funny because, like, that's how I feel when I read, the iTunes terms and conditions or something.
Right.
Okay, where do I sign? Like,
you still read those?
I try to glance through, but I've given up a long time ago now.
Yeah, I was like, no, you got me. Right?
Yep. So I'm gonna sign it. It does make me angry enough to stab someone in the back, though. So
right, absolutely.
I sympathize.
So there's also the what you call it, the Adidas. Did you notice that he was wearing Adidas?
No, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so the suits that they wear, they have an Adidas logo on them, so they're repping Adidas.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'll probably mention it later on, but yeah, that's fun.
You can buy a spandex onesie by Adidas.
Right. Do you remember the prizes for winning the Running Man competition?
What did they have? I don't remember.
Well, I remember one of the main prizes was a trial by jury.
That's good. That's actually pretty solid.
That's stuff like that is what makes the movie fun for me.
I like that too. Those little throwaway lines they did where remember when they were reading off like all her crimes against humanity.
Yes.
And one of them was like sexual relations with 2 to 3 men per year.
Right.
That
yeah. So we've got to have her brutally murdered because she had sex with somebody.
That is the ultimate slut shaming.
Wow, that's that. They just like make up stuff. It's like they're not even crimes. It's just something that gets the audience riled up.
Yeah, and I love that like their version of a slut is someone who's had sex with more than one person.
Right. So let's see. Yeah, we talked about Sub-Zero and he's now Plain Zero. The joke that doesn't make any sense.
They do two for Sub-Zero. There's another bad one-liner that was because he, I guess, wraps like a metal, what was it? Something around his neck, and he kills him via like basically decapitation, although I think his head didn't come off. But then he says, Sub-Zero, that guy was a real pain in the neck.
Yeah. No, I think that was a different one. Didn't he kill somebody else that way? I think he killed. Or was it?
Well, Sub-Zero's the hockey guy, right? And he.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Sub-Zero was a pain in the neck. That's correct. Yeah.
Because I think he wraps the whatever.
Right. That I didn't mind that one. I thought that was as a one-liner for Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was like, yeah, that's pretty standard. I was like,
that was way better than the Plane Zero.
Yeah, the Plane Zero was dumb. Plane Zero was dumb. They should have. That was supposed to be cut. At least I feel that should have been cut. Mm-hmm. It reminds me, we had watched Short Circuit. So in Short Circuit, I don't know if you remember that movie. That's the one with Steve Guttenberg and robots.
The little robot, yeah.
So in Short Circuit, they had to prove that this robot was alive. And one of the things that Steve Guttenberg decides to do is tell the robot a joke. So if the robot laughed spontaneously, that would prove that the robot was alive. And, he tells the joke, the robot laughs. It's like, okay, he's alive. But the problem is that the joke wasn't funny. It's like, if you're going to do a movie and it features, like, the movie is a comedy. And they have a lot of, like, it was, it's funny. It's a funny movie. It's very enjoyable. But the problem is that there's a joke that is featured in a movie and the joke is not funny, and that bothered me.
Yeah, all you proved is that a robot has a bad sense of humor. Like,
I guess I don't. Somebody's trying to explain that to me. I guess, but I'm like, come on, man. At least if you're gonna feature a joke in a movie, at least let the joke be funny. It's like
in comedy,
yeah. It's like that thing you do. If the song that they used to feature in the movie was not a good song, then the movie would have collapsed.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Another one-liner he did with Buzzsaw after he basically cut he didn't cut Buzzsaw in half, but he cut him pretty good. He took his Buzzsaw and I think he started from the crotch and worked his way up or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
another crotch.
Right. Another crotch shot. And this was the worst pain. This is the worst crotch pain you could possibly have.
I think that is.
And they asked him, I think Amber asked Ben, what happened to Buzzsaw, and he said he had to split, right? Yeah. So, standard comeback line. Probably not my favorite, but it's acceptable.
I think the most unexpected one-liner was when they implied that she had smuggled the video.
Right.
Like, that was shocking. That came out of nowhere. Where he was like, "Where did you keep?" It was like a little, memory card.
Right.
And he's like, "How did you get that in here?" And they just imply that she hid it. She prison wallet style.
Right. And I imagine, and I accept it because they had to strip her naked in order to put her in the suit. Right. So she had to have hid it that way. They must have left her in a room just long enough for her to pull it to do some sort of sleight of hand. Right. So that's the only way that was going to work out.
I guess it makes sense.
Right. So, it looks like they had, one of my favorite parts in the whole movie is the old lady. Do you remember the old lady that Richard Dawson brought up or Killian brought up? And she was supposed to give her guesses who's going to be the next kill, and she was like
or who's going to get the next kill.
Yeah, who's going to get the next kill, like who was going to do it. And she said Ben, and he was like, well, you can't choose a runner, you have to choose a stalker. And she was like, I could choose anybody I want, and I choose Ben Richard. He's one bad motherfucker.
She was sassy. She was not having his BS. Like, I lived a long time on this world. I could do what I want.
Right. So apparently she's based on an actual person that I'll mention later on. But yeah, that was my favorite part. To see an old woman just get sassy like that, to assert herself in the way that she did was pretty awesome.
She had some spark. She was fun. I also like how they had, I don't know, did you notice this? It showed the low budget because they had one cityscape matte painting, like a nighttime matte painting of the futuristic city. And they used that like 7 times. And then anytime they had a daytime scene, it was just basically like San Francisco or something.
Right.
And then they would to show that, oh no, don't remember, we're still in the future. They would go to the cut to that one scene. They used that same shot, I think, like 7 times.
Right. Apparently not enough budget for multiple paintings, just that one.
Blew their budget. It was a pretty good matte painting, to be fair. I'll give them.
Yeah. It's a good thing you noticed it, because I didn't really notice how many times that they used it.
If you ever watch it again, you'll just see that matte painting is the star.
Right. Also, how bloodthirsty the crowd was. The crowd was like, they wanted to see blood. There will be blood.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I wonder how close we are as a society to having an audience like that that's like screaming for blood.
I mean, we've had it in the past. We just talked about, Roman Colosseum. We've had it in the past. It
Right.
could come back, and I feel like we're not that far. I mean, Squid Game is not that far off. Like, we watch even the show that I think was inspired by this movie that was on TV for a long time, like American Gladiators. We love seeing people beat the crap out of each other. We watch MMA. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen some MMA matches where guys got their like entire faces shattered, and there's blood all over the mat. There's been boxing matches where people died. We are not all that far, I think, from. Especially, imagine if we talked about it on one of our episodes one time. I'm saying like, not within my lifetime, but I think sometime in the not too distant future, I could see the amount that people hate like pedophiles. I don't think many people would argue about like putting a pedophile in a show like this and having them chased down and killed. Like, I don't think that I think a lot of people would watch that show.
Right. Yeah, I don't doubt it. That would be that. And then it's like, but what if they're innocent? Right? It's always that. But I don't think. Right. I don't think anybody's going to hear that, or I don't think anybody would care.
Yeah, these, school shooters where we have them on video or something. Just, I don't know if I would even object to that. Just
right.
I mean, if you're gonna put them to death anyway, why not do it for? And what's interesting is for the Romans. I mean, a big part of it was to sort of, it was a deterrent effect, right? It was also like, hey, you're not going to go shoot up a school if you know what happens to people who shoot up schools, and you see it happen in front of your face in like bloody 3D. So who knows? This is, like I said, I don't think we're that far from it.
Right. So, let's see. Did you have anything else that you wanted to shout out?
I'm trying to think of other moments that were amazing for me. That you mentioned that it was the little dance scene was choreographed by Paula Abdul, and that I thought was kind of funny. Again, like, you've got this, death and destruction show with blood and stuff, and you've got just like a chorus of dancing girls out there. And I do like, it reminded me a lot of what's the movie that was by Paul Verhoeven, Starship Troopers.
Yes.
It's got a lot of just very, very in-your-face social critique and commentary stuff. And, contrasting like the dancing pretty girls with like people getting murdered, to me, is a really good commentary on society, I think.
Not only that, but how quickly they came up with a kind of memorial dance for the stalkers that got killed, right?
A memorial dance. That's something we need to integrate that into funerals.
Right. I should consider that for my funeral, a memorial dance. All the dancers dressed in black, but scantily clad on the stage. That'll work.
Hell yeah, that's appropriate for me. That's how I want to go out.
The only other thing I wanted to, I really like the last part of the movie where basically Killian's caught. So he tries to get his security guard Sven to deal with Ben. Sven is a lot larger than Ben. So, but Sven is like, oh, I skipped all over Jesse Ventura and his part in the movie. So Jesse Ventura, he doesn't want to put on all of this armor that they made for him, like apparently last minute, because the thing is like falling apart and it sounds like plastic.
He's wearing like pots and pans, and yeah, that was embarrassing. I feel him on that one.
Right. But they ended up using his image anyway to fake the death of Ben. So.
Mm-hmm.
So that was true. But the last part of the movie when he's talking to a security guard, and the security guard looks at him and he says, I guess I go score some steroids.
Yeah. I also, and I don't want to make fun of anyone's acting because, like, obviously Arnold has done a lot of work on it over the years, But this was one of the worst as far as like trying to understand what Arnold was saying. There were just moments where it was just peak mushmouth Arnold. Like and watching people have to react to like him saying something almost incomprehensible that no one would like. It was very it was very impressive to watch. That was some of the best acting in this movie, was pretending like Arnold was saying things. and and then they bring in Maria Conchita Alonso, and she's a great actress, but I mean she has an accent too, and sometimes the two of them back and forth, I was like, wow, that was a gutsy move, because I need to turn on the captions right now.
And I think that comes down to director Starsky from Starsky and Hutch. I think that if it were a better director, they would have been better at bringing out a more competent performance out of their actors, right?
It might have been, part of it might have been the sound staging too. I think some of it was just like, it just wasn't, it wasn't great. So yeah, it made it even worse.
Right.
That stuck out to me. I was like, man, this is hard. This is hard.
Harder than you remember. All right, so that's it for that part, where we talked about our favorite parts. So we reminisced, and we talked about what we really enjoyed about this movie. And now, after this short musical cue, we're gonna talk about the trivia. All right, we're back with the trivia from IMDb, where I get all of my trivia because I'm a little bit lazy. I'll admit that. So, if you could, Shane, just lead us off.
Well, this one's interesting. So we kind of touched on this a little bit. So it says when Rob Cohen purchased the rights to the Richard Bachman novel, The Running Man, he had no idea that Bachman was actually a pseudonym for Stephen King. So, apparently Bachman was starting to pick up steam and doing pretty well. He was getting movie studio interest, even though they didn't know it was Stephen King.
Right. So it was starting to work, and he only stopped basically because people found out who he was, like you said earlier. But like I said, he had written one more book, but I think he wrote it as a gag under Bachman, because at that point everybody knew who he was. So if I remember, he wrote like a double book. So one book he wrote as Stephen King, and one book he wrote as Bachman, and they were packaged together. But I only managed to read one of those books. So
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Many people who worked with Richard Dawson on the game show Family Feud from 1976 said that in real life, Dawson was more like his character Damon Killian in handling of his underlings. Oh, that sucks.
Ouch. I guess, that makes me feel a little bit bad for saying he was a great actor, because maybe he wasn't acting. That was just him being him.
Right. But it's kind of sad to find out that Richard, I used to watch Family Feud all the time. It's kind of sad to find out about him.
I know that undermines my whole childhood there. I hope, what's his name? The guy with the mustache who does it now. Who's the
Steve Harvey, and I'm even more closely connected to Steve Harvey than I am with Richard Dawson, because I've been like watching Steve Harvey since like way back when he was doing like the small comedy shows on HBO. So when he was doing Showtime at the Apollo on regular television, right, when he was a host of that show. So and then he has a radio show. I've been listening to that for a long time, but I don't. As much as I've been paying attention to him, I haven't seen him do anything like that's untoward.
He seems like a nice guy. And I really hope, I honestly don't want to know. Like, if it turns out, if anyone knows that Steve Harvey's a jerk, don't tell me.
Right.
I want to live with my, I'm holding on to my belief that Steve Harvey is who he seems to be. My wife is super big fan of Celebrity Family Feud. She's always watching. And so we watch a lot of Steve Harvey. Next trivia bit here. Although credited as simply Sub-Zero, the character is introduced as Professor Sub-Zero by announcer Phil Hilton. Professor Sub-Zero was played by, as we mentioned before, Professor Toru Tanaka. And it says, it is worth noting that Tanaka's title of professor is not from a postdoctorate academic rank, but rather from the wrestling name that the actor went under in his wrestling career from the 1960s through the 80s. So it was sometimes shortened to Professor Tanaka.
Right. I've watched a lot of wrestling. I don't think I've ever seen him wrestle, but that makes a lot of sense. It's like, aha, that's why he's Professor Tanaka.
That totally tracks. Although, yeah, I watched a lot of wrestling too, and I don't remember him at all.
One of the things that I was looking for in the trivia was whether that was him really skating, and I didn't see that. I should have Googled it when I couldn't find it in the regular trivia, but I don't know if that was him actually skating. But I'll just leave that to somebody else to figure out.
Well, if it wasn't, that's some of the best effects in the movie then. Because,
Yeah.
it sure looked like he was skating around.
Right. So Erland Van Lideth, who played Dynamo, was a classically trained Helden baritone opera singer. So in his introduction, when Dynamo is singing from an aria from The Marriage of Figaro, it actually is Lideth singing. This was also his final movie, as well as that of Richard Dawson.
His final movie. I don't remember seeing him in anything else, but I'll take their word for it.
Yeah, sadly, it's his final movie because he had passed away before the movie was released theatrically. So,
really? Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of he died of a heart attack. So that's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I mean, he's a big dude, so I guess it kind of tracks. The film inspired, apparently, TV's American Gladiators. We mentioned that from 1989, as well as the plot and settings of the William arcade game Smash TV from 1990. I don't know that game.
Yeah, I've seen it in arcades. I didn't know that inspired Smash TV, but it kind of looks like American Gladiators.
Huh.
So we talked about this earlier, but the dance number at the starting of The Running Man was choreographed by Paula Abdul, and many of the dancers were friends of hers from the Laker Girls.
The footage of the attacking helicopters is apparently from King Kong, 1976's King Kong. So I guess that's smart.
That's a way to save money.
Savvy move there.
Yeah. When Killian is sending Fireball into the game, he says, "There goes the leading rusher." Fireball was played by Jim Brown, the NFL's all-time leading rusher in yards until the mid-1980s.
Yeah, they chose the right football player, too, because Jim Brown never killed his wife.
I should hope so.
It says, although Arnold Schwarzenegger hates Richard Dawson on screen, in real life, they were lifelong friends. So that's interesting. I guess he was a jerk to his employees, but not to his co-stars.
Yeah, it wouldn't be good to be a jerk to your co-stars. But what's really interesting is that...
Don't piss off Arnold in general, I think.
Right. But also, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Richard Dawson seem to be from vastly different worlds. So it's amazing that they are friends, right? Okay. It's not something I would have imagined.
Although two cigar-smoking rich guys, so, how far apart could they be?
Right. They must have been in the same circles.
Yeah.
So originally scheduled for a July 1987 release, it was moved back 4 months by TriStar to avoid competition with Arnold Schwarzenegger's other summer film, Predator, in same year, 1987, which was released in June. So, wow, he was really working it.
Yeah, Arnold was a workaholic. That man, he never stops going. I think to this day, as we learned, he's going to be in another movie soon.
Right.
It says it's hinted that Mick Fleetwood plays himself in the movie. I guess that would make sense because the name was Mick. The resistance leader's name is Mick, and he is British. And when Mick meets Richards to remove his explosive collar from around his neck, he says to him, "You're one of the cops who locked up all my friends and burned my songs."
Right. It's funny, right? Because I thought he said, when he said burned my song, I thought he was talking about like he had a record collection. You burned my song because I don't know Fleetwood Mac's. But it's like, oh, you burned his songs, like the songs he wrote and performed, burned his songs. Like, oh, that tracks. That makes sense.
That's a layer that I definitely wouldn't have caught when I saw it the first time as a young guy.
Right. Arnold Schwarzenegger thought Paul Michael Glaser was a terrible choice to direct. With what Glaser coming from a TV background and having no film experience as a director at all, he thought Glaser shot this film like a TV show, losing all of the script's deeper themes. Schwarzenegger suspected that because Glaser was a last-minute replacement, he didn't have time to research this film he was depicting, unlike James Cameron had with The Terminator from 1984. Although in television, they hired you and the very next week you shot. So he didn't place all of the blame at Glaser's feet. So it seems like Arnold was not in favor of having a TV director.
Yeah, yeah. There was, I guess, a lot of controversy about this movie, and I don't know. I'm kind of reading forward to see if it talks about this in the trivia at all. But there were sort of different. There were a lot of different concepts of how this movie was going to go before it was made, and in fact, they had originally cast Christopher Reeve as Ben Richards, and it was going to be a much darker film. It was going to be a more similar to the book. And like, I don't think I went in depth on how different the book is, but like incredibly different. Like there aren't any real murders in it as far as like, there's no one getting hunted down. The hunting is done by what are called hunters, but they're really just police officers. Like they just let the guy go, and then it's just up to people to report him, and then police officers catch him, basically. Like there's no, like big guy who's out there trying to, with flashy makeup and everything, trying to kill people. None of that exists in the movie. So they wanted to make it a much more like allegory, like a lot more of a critique of society, and it was going to be a serious film. And, Christopher Reeve was even though he was Superman, he was a classically trained actor, and this was going to be one of his sort of serious vehicles. And then once they cast Arnold, all that went out the window.
Right. And yeah, I think he turned it down. And I was like, well, why would you do that? That was he turned it down to do something else.
I honestly, as much as I have affection for this movie, I would have loved to have seen that version, actually.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I'm thinking how much different his career would have been had Christopher Reeve had starred in this movie, or a version of it.
Yeah, it would have been. I'm a big Christopher Reeve fan. I would have loved to see him do more dramatic stuff, and especially more, this was like action and drama and sci-fi, which are sort of my wheelhouse. And so that would have been super cool. I wish they'd done it.
What other Christopher Reeves movies have you seen, or TV shows, or?
Oh God, I mean, I've seen him in he did a bunch of made-for-TV stuff. He was actually, I think Christopher Reeve was in some. He was actually a soap opera actor briefly before. And so I actually went through and just watched a bunch of old Christopher Reeve clips and stuff. And then I saw a lot of when he was initially auditioning for Superman 2, there's a lot of footage of that. So yeah, I don't know if I've seen him do I'm sure I've seen him in other movies, but mostly I've just seen a lot of clips of him acting. And then I've read a lot about his backstory too. I mean, he was Juilliard trained. He was best friends with Robin Williams when they were in, I think it was Juilliard, when they were in one of the major acting schools together. And they were all like serious actors. And he really, I think he was really concerned about what Superman was going to do to him as an actor, because he was scared that he'd be pigeonholed. And in fact, he was. I mean, that's what happened to him. Like, he could never break out of the Superman role after that. So yeah, it was self-fulfilling prophecy. And then of course a tragic ending too.
Right.
John McTiernan intentionally kept Jesse Ventura out of any close-up shots with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator because of Ventura's immense size. He's 6'5" and almost 300 pounds, or was. The director didn't want Schwarzenegger looking small in comparison, which is evident during the fight scene in The Running Man when Ventura dwarfs Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Ventura's a big dude. He doesn't, but to me, honestly, he didn't look that much bigger, because I guess he was bending his legs or whatever. So
I think they went out of their way to try to
right.
Yeah.
So Richard Dawson only agreed to be in the film provided that he was not expected to use any profanity in his dialogue. So he may have been mean to his employees, but at least he didn't curse at them, I guess.
At least not on film.
Right.
It says 4 actors from the Predator film franchise appear in this film. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jesse Ventura, Sven Ole Thorsen. They all appear in the original film, Predator, from 1987. And then, as we talked about, Maria Conchita Alonso appears in the sequel, Predator 2, from 1990.
The Running Man suit that was, we read about this, but it just says that it has the Adidas logo on the hip and right arm.
The character of Mrs. McCardle, whom host Damon Killen states is the show's #1 fan, is an homage to Mrs. Miller, a longtime fixture of miniseries, including The Merv Griffin Show. Her entire claim to fame was that she showed up to tapings almost every day. I think you mentioned that.
Right. The Running Man game show scene in the film was based upon the early 1980s Japanese game show called Trans-American Ultra Quiz, in which contestants were tortured in various ways. The prize went to whichever contestant could stand the pain/humiliation the longest. I imagine that's true because I've seen some clips of Japanese game shows and they are crazy.
I'm telling you, like I said, we're not that far away.
Right.
I mean, if you're eating, horse penis on Fear Factor, how far is it from allowing yourself to be tortured?
Right, absolutely.
It says when Richards is chased by police at the airport and falls, a body double is used. The same body double may be used at the beginning of the chase when Richards runs at incredible speed like an Olympic champion and his face is not shown. That's an interesting.
Right.
It says may be used. This is the sketchy.
I had read somewhere else that they had, for most of the running shots, they had to use a body double because Schwarzenegger, being a bodybuilder, does not look good when he runs. Right? He doesn't look.
There are a lot of action stars, though. We just talked about on one of our other episodes. We do after midnight episodes for the patrons. And we talked about Steven Seagal. Have you ever seen the clips of Steven Seagal? If you go online and YouTube Steven Seagal running, there are composites, clips that are smashed together of Steven Seagal running, and he runs like a creepy Muppet. Like it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's like he doesn't know how to use his hands, and there's this weird limp wristed thing when he runs. It almost looks like he's making fun of himself running, but he does it in every movie. So you got to see one of these.
Wow, that's crazy. I need to look that up. I guess not everybody can be Tom Cruise.
Yep, Tom Cruise. According to Duncan, I didn't know this. Tom Cruise is considered the best runner out there. So.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I didn't notice that about Steven Seagal, but I kind of noticed it with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and because and his is different. It's like he physically can't look good running because his muscles are bulging, and I don't think that aerobics or running is a huge part of his training regimen.
Yeah, cardio not on his calendar, I think.
Right.
Yeah. I would like to see him run, though. I would like to put those side by side with Steven Seagal.
Right, that'll be awesome. So the incidental background dialogue and visuals are often nonsensical. Two examples of this are the non-sequitur Latin and French phrases used by the court-appointed talent agent that I mentioned earlier, reading Ben Richards' contract. Just a bunch of garbage. And then at the end credits of the Running Man game show that play on the monitor behind Killian, which says things like art direction by Red G Blue and primary colors, and what next? I don't know. Right? So
props for that. I love that they were just like, no one's going to see this anyway.
Right. But the thing about it is that they kind of put it in plain view. So if you're paying attention, like if you're watching the movie for the second or third time, this is something that you're going to see.
That's good. I like it's Easter eggs, right? That's cool.
Right. And I think that kind of speaks to the movie not really taking itself seriously. So like I said, it's one of the things where I could kind of look at the movie and enjoy it because it's not really that serious.
Yeah, and thank God it doesn't take itself seriously.
Right.
That would be terrible.
Absolutely. So that's it for the trivia, and now we hear up on our final segments. We're going to see what the critics thought.
Do you read A there?
Yeah, let me tackle that one. So what happens is that the critics gave it 27%, audience gave it 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb reviews gives it a 6.6 out of 10. This is all consistent. This is the most consistent I've seen IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes.
So you said critics gave it 27?
Oh, 67. What did I write there? What do you have?
Oh, yeah. It shows 67. You said 27. So
I meant to say 67. My bad. Or maybe it was
wow, I don't think they hated it that much.
Right. Maybe it was my diction. It was a tomato. It wasn't rotten yet. So they sort of liked it, right? I think the people who liked it understood that it wasn't a serious movie, and they were able to laugh and enjoy and just let the movie be what it was.
And I think that also a lot of the Rotten Tomatoes reviews are probably in retrospect. You find that movies weren't reviewed quite as well at the time, but now over time there's a kind of rose-colored glasses. People look back and have nostalgic fondness for it.
Right.
And that's some of it too with this film.
Right.
Roger Hurlburt from the South Florida Sun Sentinel. He gave it a good review. He said The Running Man is an energetic film that succeeds better as bloody adventure than it does as social commentary. I would agree with that. The commentary is pretty on the nose and a little bit simplistic. And then Jeff Andrew from Time Out said, pretty warmed over stuff. This future world of the terminal TV game shows and director Glazer fails to muster much pace and punch. And I don't really agree with that. I think it's got good pace. It's pretty frenetic from the beginning.
Yeah, it's got some punch too. I don't know what he was watching or how he was paying attention to the movie. He was like, oh my God, I got to write about this movie again. Right.
Yeah. That's a real hater.
So, Mike Maisie from Gone with the Twins wrote, slam, bam, bravado, nonstop adventure, and overall modest fun, based loosely on a science fiction story by Richard Bachman, also known as Stephen King. And yeah, he's mostly right. When they say loosely, you got to kind of say very, very loosely.
Yeah, loosely is an overstatement.
Right.
Yeah, and they could see maybe inspired by like the way that they get around, when something's not real. That might work, but it's not based on it all.
Right. Inspired by it seems like a better moniker. And then Matt Brunson wrote, he's from Creative Loading. Oh, shoot, I said it wrong. Creative Loafing. He
Creative
wrote,
Loafing.
Yeah, Creative Loafing. Yeah, that's, I like that. I like the name of that. He wrote, give the movie credit for being prescient. Given the disgusting rise and success of reality TV, it's not difficult at all to imagine fans of garbage like Survivor or Jersey Shore easily turning into the audience for a death sport show like The Running Man. So what's funny about that? We were just talking about that.
I like how he just throws Survivor and Jersey Shore in there too. He's like, I want to, I want to do a critique of pretty much everything I hate.
Right, absolutely. He does not like any of these shows.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong, but yeah, he's still kind of a hater.
They're not all bad. I would say, or I would tell people, well, I don't watch reality shows or think they're bad. But then I realized that I do watch reality shows. I used to watch Cops. I had seen, if it's on TV, I'll watch Storage Wars, or I watch I forgot, Pawnbrokers or whatever the pawn shop dudes are called.
Yeah, Pawn Stars, I think.
Yeah, Pawn Stars. I watched the hell out of that.
Yeah, we watch a lot of reality TV, but I think the only thing that matters to me is if you know that it's bad. Like anyone who watches reality TV thinking this is quality, entertainment and this is good for the world has blinders on and is delusional. But like if you watch it going like this is awful, but I enjoy it, it's like eating fast food. Like
right.
I don't eat McDonald's thinking I'm going to get healthy. I'm not going to get ripped by eating at Burger King. I know that, but I'm still going to eat there every now and then because it tastes good.
Right, absolutely. So finally, I hit something. Finally, The Running Man is, as of this recording, available for purchase at your favorite streaming service. That's it for today. Please join us next week as I do something completely new. Next week, I will watch a classic film from the 90s that I have never seen before with special guest Jen, who you may have heard on the My Streaming Bubble podcast. Follow us on Twitter or TikTok at Backlook Cinema, or Facebook or Instagram at Backlook Cinema Podcast for updates. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions, comments, and suggestions at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. Do you have any additional plugs? Actually, I didn't have you plug anything in the first place. Plug your stuff, man.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. That's really my favorite thing that I have going right now. Like I said, I am starting to get back to shows, and as I book shows, they're going to be on my website at shanerogers.net. But at this point, really our favorite thing and my favorite thing, and just something that I'm super proud of is Midnight Facts for Insomniacs. So go check that out. I think, there's a little something for everyone. We've got everything from, Scientology to weird facts about animals. So just anything that you're into, you'll find something that appeals to you. So go check that out.
Yeah, I really enjoy the show. I like also the fact that it's short and sweet. I know this show is running kind of long. It was like, I don't even like listening to myself for more than an hour, but And so I really like
we have
that.
some that, yeah. Well, that's the thing is like the topic for us does dictate the length. So we have some that are an hour. I mean, we got one or two that are like an hour and a half.
Right,
But
right.
mostly they're usually kind of bite sized, usually like 30 to 45 minutes.
Right. And the type of show where you're just talking about facts, that really appeals to me. I think I listened to a few podcasts that are talking about just stray facts about things. There's something about me that's attracted to people talking about stuff.
Yeah, that's why we started it, because I wanted to make the kind of show that I would want to listen to.
Right, absolutely. So one last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow. To do this, you can subscribe to the show, rate us or write a review on Spotify, podchaser.com, or Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. And I know you've enjoyed our guest, Mr. Shane Rogers, so please listen to Midnight Facts for Insomniacs whenever or wherever you listen to podcasts. Believe me, it matters. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryears with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.